Welcome back to Library Trust YouTube channel. In today's class, we're going to learn how to make this beautiful pyjama set. So it has a lapel on the neckline and it also has a piping. I'll take you through how to cut and sew this. It's a notch collar lapel. So to do this, you're going to take your pattern paper and you're going to create like an allowance for your lapel. So after creating the allowance, I use 3 inches. I'll start taking my shoulder measurement there, and then from there I'll come down by 1 inch from my shoulder slope, then 3 inches for my neck width, and then I'm going to connect like that. For the neckline, I use 1 inch for the back and 3 inches for the front, and then I took my curved ruler and then connected it like that. I'm using this pattern for both front and back. So now from the shoulder, you're going to mark your armhole measurement and then you connect like that. On that point, you're going to divide your bust by 4 and then you mark your bust divided by 4. So you're going to add extra allowance. It's very loosely fitted. So I added 3 inches allowance, 2 inches for ease and 1 inch for seam allowance. So there you're going to take your shoulder measurements again and then you're going to connect it so that you can draw your armhole curve. So I took the midpoint of the armhole line, came in by half an inch and then I connected my armhole curve. So after that, now you're going to take your waist measurement and the full length of your blouse. This I use 31 inches for my full length. It's a long shirt. So now you're going to measure what you have on your bust. You can repeat it on the waist, but I just removed 1 inch. Okay, let's say you have 18 inches on your bust. You can use 17 for your waist so that you can have like a bit of shaping. And on the M line, you're going to take your hip divided by 4 and add the 3 inches allowance as well, and then I connected everything together. So that is what I have. So like I said, I'm using this for the back. So if you want to cut the back, you just need to fold in your lapel allowance. So to create a lapel now, my breaking point is going to be my chest line. That's where the folding of the lapel is going to stop. So I marked 1 inch from the chest line downwards. That is my button placket allowance. So the next thing is to create the lapel. So for the lapel, you're going to extend your front neckline. I marked 2 inches extension there, and I took my curved ruler to connect it to my breaking point. Can you see? So that is my lapel. You just need to make sure that you blend in your lines. So that is what my lapel is going to look like, and that is basically all you need to do. So the last thing I'm doing is just to add my hemming allowance to the pattern so that I don't have to add it on my fabric, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. So you're going to grab your scissors and then you cut around it. So like I said, we are cutting the back first. We are using the same pattern to cut both the back and front. So I'm going to fold in the lapel and then I'm going to use it to cut my back first. That's why I'm not cutting the front neckline yet, because if you cut your front neckline, then it's going to affect your back pattern. So now I have cut it out. The next thing is to fold in the lapel for the front. So you are going to fold it in, then you bring your fabric and cut the back before cutting the front. So this is my fabric. I've placed the back pattern on it, and then I'll just cut out what I have on my pattern. You can see this is my back neckline. You put allowance on your shoulder and then you cut that out. You can add allowance to your armhole as well if you want. Like I said, it's not tightly fitted, so it's not a problem. So once you cut the back, you're going to keep it and then you bring out your front lapel. Now you can cut your front neckline out. So now my front neckline is out. I'll fold my fabric again and place my pattern on it. So once you do this, you grab your scissors and then you cut your front pattern as well. So just cut around what you have there, cut exactly what you have. I'm putting allowance on my shoulder. I'm not putting any allowance on this side again because I already added 1 inch allowance on the pattern. So the for the sake of measurement, the bust I used is 46 divided by 4. Then I added 3 inches allowance to that. Okay, so now the next thing to do now is to cut your facing. So for the facing, I marked 5 inches from the center front. Sorry, my camera was not placed well. On the shoulder, I divided the shoulder into two, and then I just connected everything together. Okay, so after connecting it, I cut it out, and you can see it's better now. So that is what I used to cut my facing. Facing is important. Remember, is that it has a lapel that's going to open outside, so you need to have the right fabric showing there as well. That's why you need your facing. So I'm folding my leftover fabric and then seeing how I can manage the fabric to cut my facing. So once you fold your fabric, you're going to place the facing pattern on it, and then you're going to cut out the facing as well. Please make sure that you notch your center front, the center front line in front, where your center front stop on the neckline. You need to place a notch on it because that is where you start sewing your collar. I forgot to mention that. So when you cut it out like this, when you cut your pattern out, you're facing and your main fabric for the front, on the neckline area, you're going to hold the center front, that center line, center front line on your neckline. Can you see? And then you place a notch there. It's very, very important. So now we are done cutting it. I just added stay to the side where my lapel is going to open up. You can see. And then I have weaved the facing. So what you want to do now, like I said, you're going to be piping it with bias. So I'll take my bias and then sew it all around. So you start sewing from that notch that I say you should make. That's where you start sewing. You sew from the notch all the way to the hem. You can see I have done mine now. I sew it from the notch and I turned with my facing. Before sew your bias, then you place your facing on it. You start sewing from your center front and then you turn it out. Can you see? The piping is already there. So you're going to do the same thing for the second side, and that's what your lapel is going to look like when you open it out. So now it has a pocket in front. Please pay attention to this pocket because you're going to use the same method for your sleeve. So I'm marking my pocket measurement. I used 8 inches in length and 7 inches width for my pocket. That is my pocket. But it's going to have like a piping on the hem of the pocket. So for that, I'm using 2 inches and I'm connecting that. So this is what the pocket is going to look like. But you need to separate the lower part from the upper part. That's why I'm cutting it out. So I'll separate the 2 inches. That 2 inches now, I'll cut it away and then they will be cut separately. So you are going to fold your fabric and then cut the lower part separately. So you need to add seam allowance all around it because you are going to be folding it inside. So you can see that I am adding extra seam allowance around the pocket. So you are going to, can you see, you fold it in like that. So you add seam allowance, then you keep this aside. So you are going to bring the upper part. So for the upper part is going to be cut on fold. Can you see? I have folded it and I'm going to place the pattern on it. So you are going to add half-inch allowance on the lower part to sew. On the upper part, you are not adding any allowance because it's on fold. So you add half-inch on the lower part, and this is what you are going to have. So we have two pockets. That's why I'm separating it into two. I have weaved my pockets as well, and that's the upper part. I added stitch to it. It's a silk fabric, so it's not really easy to work with. So the fold seam allowance, you can see that I folded one inside. So now for the piping, you're going to sew your bias on the lower part. Can you see? You're going to sew the bias on the lower part, and then you're going to open the upper part and sew. Just do what I'm doing. You're going to open the upper part and sew, and then flip the second one. So can you see? I have sewn the upper part on it like that. So the remaining part of the upper part, I'll just use it to close it up and then stop stitch on it. So when you are done sewing, your piping is going to show. That is the exact same thing you are going to do for your sleeve as well. So my pocket is ready now. I'm just placing it where I want it to be on the front bodice. I measured 3 inches from the center front and 5 inches upward. So this is the sleeve. You can see it's a basic sleeve. Then I measured 4 inches upward for the curve. So the same thing we did for the pocket. That's what you are going to do for your sleeve as well. I missed the clip on that. So I have gone ahead to sew my front and back together. You can see I've joined this on the shoulder to turn with your facing. And this is my sleeve. I've also sewn the sleeve to the bodies. So if I open it now, you will see that the sleeve also has like what we have on the pocket. It has that curve, and then it's just 4 inches. So you take it out from your actual sleeve measurement. It's a long sleeve. So I use 25 inches length for my sleeve. It's very, very long. So that is what we have. So the last thing to do is the collar. So to do the collar, you're going to take your neckline together, and then start measuring from your center front. Remember, that's where the neck is. You check what you have there. I have 8 inches. So I'll take a fresh paper, and then I'm going to mark the 8 inches plus half-inch allowance. Okay, so I have 8.5 inches by 4 inches. The height of the collar is 4 inches, and that is what I'm measuring. So there you're going to extend by 1 inch on the upper part. I'm extending the upper part by 1 inch, and then from the lower part I'll come up by 1 inch as well. Just watch what I'm doing, and then I'll take my ruler and then connect them together. You extend the upper part by 1 inch, then you come up by 1 inch on the lower part. So the next thing is to take your curve ruler and connect that 1 inch to the other end at the midpoint. So can you see, that is the color that I'm working with. It's very, very simple. So once you have this color now, you're going to go ahead and cut it out. And this is with allowance. The 8.5 by 4 inches, the height is for everything is 4 inches, and that is with the seam allowance. By the time I sew on the upper part and the lower part, I'll be left with 3 inches, which is fine for me. So you're going to cut the curve that you created on the lower part as well, and that is it. That part is going to be cut on fold, so please remember that. So I have gone to add este to my fabric, and then I'll put it on fold into two. Then I'll just place this pattern on it, and then cut out exactly what I have there. Remember, I said it already has allowance, and you're cutting two. That is why I'm folding it into four like that. Make sure you place the fold point where the fold point is supposed to be, and then you're going to cut around your pattern. So for this collar as well, we're going to be piping it. So the same thing we did for the center front of the main shirt. You just bring your bias, you sew it to one end first, and then you use the other one to turn it out. So this is what the collar looks like now. Can you see? The lining and the main fabric is the same thing. So I'll first use my bias to pipe one side first, and then I'm going to use it to turn it out. So you're going to sew that to your collar. This is what you're going to have when you are done. I have a detailed tutorial on how to make a standard collar. So if you don't know how to, let me know in the comment section so that I can drop the link to the tutorial. So this is what we have. This is what our pajamas is looking like. You can see the collar, the notched collar that we have there is very simple to make, and it's very, 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 very comfortable to wear as well. I hope you enjoyed making this with me, and I'll see you in the next one.